Perfect. Hey everyone. How are you guys? I'm so happy you're here, and I'm sure you're wondering why I had this obnoxious music, lights going, the whole thing. I wanted you to kind of simulate a sensory input kind of situation. So basically, what I did was you're coming into a new place. The lights are, going on and off. You're also hearing a lot of noise. It can be very dysregulating, or it can be very good because you've had a long day at work and you're looking for something to wake you up a little bit. So some people it does help, and there's other people that it makes it really difficult for them to find a seat and feel comfortable. It can also give them anxiety, things like that. So I'm really excited that you guys are here, and they're going to put a little short video just so you can know what McNeill Children's Institute is doing and the passion we have to help families of Rhode Island.
That's what you do at the Children's Institute.
Yes. So I have been an occupational therapist for 24 years and I help as many families and children as possible. And it really makes me so grateful to be able to help people in this way as they just need to navigate through the difficult systems of special education, having a child with disabilities, and not having education available to them. Why I started McNeill Children's Institute was because I grew up in Middletown and I went to California for extensive training, training that they necessarily don't have occupational therapy practitioners here that do the same things. So I'm here really to help families in Rhode Island thrive, especially after COVID, just, creating a healthy, positive environment for families, as well as really getting away the obstacles that children face with school and just dealing with friends, just to get them to their potential.
Right. And then also
Occupational therapy.
too, I'm just kind of curious. So if it's occupational therapy, can we just define what that is? And then also too, does a child have to be special needs to see you and to work with you? Or can any child work with you?
Yes, that's a really good question. So, occupational therapy in the world of pediatrics is anything that they're having difficulty with, whether it's at home or at school, and they do not have to have special needs. We deal with a lot of children with just difficulty controlling their body, knowing how to have friends, how distance to stand away from them, being able to share, being able to follow the rules in a game, things like that. Dealing with people's ocular motor issues. So, one out of four typically developing children have ocular motor issues where their eyes aren't able to move as they should be for reading, writing, and math. So, a lot of our focus is what we call the gray area. So, those are the children that have disabilities such as dyslexia or ADHD, very minor disabilities, but it makes them have a struggle within school or at home or with siblings. So we really try to promote a happy family and create strategies individually for each family.
Cool. So I'm curious, maybe it's because autism and ADHD run in my family. Because, when you get on TikTok, right, whatever your algorithm is and whatever you're interested in, it all follows you. So everything I'm seeing is related to that. And I'm just wondering, is autism on the rise? Is ADHD on the rise? Or are we just better at diagnosing it? And is it affecting a large number of the population, or does everyone kind of have a quirkiness to them?
I think the spectrum of ADHD and autism are just such a large spectrum. I think there's sensory processing difficulties with all of us. Okay. So when you're looking at something like autism, you're looking for three major categories that they're having difficulty in. Okay. So there's sensory processing, which can look like autism. Sensory processing disorders can cause things like the flapping, the walking on the toes, lots of different difficulties with just controlling their body and how to be in the world. So that can look very similar. So you also have to have a speech difficulty as well as a social piece. So those three. So when you're looking at a child, sometimes the sensory processing combined with the pragmatic or social skills issue can look like that. So, what we're doing is we're peeling back the onion. We look at kids from head to toe. Where are the weak spots that causing them stress at school or at home, or having difficulty making friends? So, really, it's a really comprehensive type of therapy, and you really don't have a lot of boundaries to it. So, a lot of children that are finding counseling is helping, or they can't get into counseling, come see us because we basically talk about their feelings. We learn about strategies that will help them, and we do it on things like the rock climbing wall. Go to red and tell me everything that's you're angry about. Go to yellow and tell me what you feel like when you're starting to get a little bit anxious or you're not feeling comfortable inside. Tell me what you can do. Go to green. What is something that makes you really happy? Like, what are the strategies that you can utilize to help yourself in those situations? So it's really helpful for
Man,
all kids.
that rock climbing wall
Yeah.
sounds like fun. Yeah, you get to
Yeah.
combine physical activity with emotions. That's amazing. Oh my gosh. So Sarah, I know you've got some success stories. Would you please share some of the success stories that you've seen in your work?
Yeah, so we treat birth to 22. So we kind of see the gamut. So we've got kids who are, um, the parents are not as educated as they should be on developmental stages. So we have kids that, um, were still on the bottle at 5, had never chewed anything, had never drank water. We have got a child who was still on the bottle at age 5, and he's at age 7 now. He's been seeing us for 2 years, and it does take a long time to get them to tolerate these textures. So he is now eating full dinners, mashed potatoes, carrots, chicken. We're really proud of that success. Another, success story is we're really having a lot of teenagers come in with difficulties and anxieties about being in that social situation of college or high school. So we work through these things. We kind of say, okay, this is the way to make a friend. This is the way to handle someone that is not your friend or trying to bully you. We had a recent college student who came in this summer, and she was very anxious. She had difficulty with her family. So we had a couple family meetings so we can go through any of the issues she was having there that were causing the anxiety. So now she's really comfortable at home. Parents are changing their ways. Dad realized that he had sensory issues. So he's now going to the gym. She really needs to go to the gym to regulate herself. Okay. So what we did was we had occupational therapy at the gym. We kind of got her used to all the machines. She's back in college now. She's much happier. We use some homeopathic with her. We use some essential oils that can help her calm down, feel like she has the ability to go to class and be really functional at college.
Wow. Okay, that sounds amazing. So it sounds like you're not in this, what a great story, right? Because you're healing her, but then her dad is also getting better. And then yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, how many times do we pay for college education, and for whatever reason that education is derailed, and there's so much money that goes into college, right? And you want to make sure that you put all of that to use, and that the student is truly absorbing everything from that learning process. So, Sarah, I'm so proud of you and what you're doing. My goodness.
Yeah.
How do people find you and your Children's Institute?
Yes, thank you so much for that. We now have a Middletown location. It's very large, and we see about 400 hours of kids there. So you can go onto our website, which is McNeillChildren'sInstitute.com. You get referrals through your counselor or your neuropsych doctor, as well as your pediatrician. And we take some insurances. We have classes that you can sign up for just to test it out. Toddler and preschool, learning how to share, be without their parents after COVID, things like that. We have a handwriting class, which includes ocular motor, visual motor, and visual perceptual. We also have a self regulation class to try out to see if the child starts to understand those strategies. Our phone number, you can give our practice manager, Chris, a call. She is at 401 683 8063. And we're opening in East Greenwich at the beginning of 2023. And what I've noticed is children are having difficulty regulating in typical preschools. These children are typical, but they're not able to function at this point in a regular preschool. So we are creating a sensory based program for all of the kids who have difficulty in those typical preschools. They can come and their teacher and occupational therapist run the program so that they can have the visuals and they can learn the strategies so that they're ready for that kindergarten, because you don't get as much support in kindergarten. And I'm seeing this need. A lot of kids, they're getting exited from preschool at this point. So we're really excited to open that.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
thrilled to have you. Oh, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today. And everybody, thank you so much for joining us here on Ask the Doc. If you want to find out more about Sarah McNeill and what she's doing in Rhode Island, please go to Buzz TV at iwantabuzz.com. All right, see you next time. Bye.
So I hope all you guys enjoyed that. Just a little introduction of who we are and how we got to be here. So I will answer questions at the end. I'm going to stay a little bit longer so that if anyone has any questions, they can come up to me. I'll be outside in that area right to the right when you leave. So I gave you a little essential oil, and then there's the fidget. So what I wanted you to experience was that sensory input, and then utilizing that fidget toy as well as that oil to help you kind of regulate and come down from the day. So the oil is a medical grade essential oil, and it's called Gentle Baby. It's from Young Living. You can put it on your heart or your earlobes. You can just smell it. It really helps to just regulate the mind and create some consistency and calm in the brain. So I hope you enjoy those while you're sitting there. So the goals of this presentation are to learn how to identify your child's sensory signals as well as your own. As parents, we have our own sensory needs, and a lot of times we don't realize we have those sensory needs until we have kids, and then we realize we're overstimulated very quickly. So we need to quickly find strategies so that we can help our children. We're going to learn about each sensory system and the function and how it affects that everyday life. We're going to find some strategies for the whole family, because a lot of times this ruins our family dynamic and makes things really difficult for other people. We're also going to learn some individualized strategies for your child today. So you will be taking home today strategies to utilize starting tonight, tomorrow, however you want to start. We're also going to learn how to get help if you feel your child's in difficulty. Like if you can't handle what they're giving you, where do you go and how do you get help for those types of things? You want to go to the next? Two more. Perfect. So what is self-regulation? I mean, it's so big. It's really the person's ability to control his or her emotional, physical, mental responses to sensation. So a sensation comes in, maybe someone had fish for lunch and they put it in the microwave in the workroom, and it just kind of sets you into a different place that you were before you went to lunch. So maybe the afternoon is a little more difficult because you just get dysregulated by that. It basically starts at birth and it goes a lifetime. I will say that children going through the pubescent years, as well as adults kind of entering into their later life, find that their sensory systems have changed. They may see an uptick in those sensory responses, and we want to make sure you have those strategies for when you're going through those or your child is. And hopefully you're not going through your own while your child is going through the terrible teens. So At birth, the children are rolling, they're sucking, they're being swaddled, they're picked up, they're mouthing objects. They are getting sensory input throughout their day, the entire day. Your nervous system is not fully developed until 6 months. That's why we don't start, say, the Ferber method or the, sleep training type stuff until we've gotten to that 6-month period. Children in school need to regulate, attend, complete activities, take in information, deal with many sensations. They have to deal with new classes, new kids, different kinds of teachers. And I would say that one of the areas that I think is really important to remember is that in the developmental triangle, okay, the bottom of that triangle, because you did it at birth, sucking, all of those things, your speech comes in after your sensory nervous system has been fully developed. So what does that mean for kids with speech issues? A lot of speech issues, especially when they're younger, before kindergarten, are really related to sensory processing. Because if you haven't moved past sensory processing, you are not able to do the next level of skill. So for instance, I have sensory issues. I wore a really bad pair of pants to work this week. I could not stop thinking about the pants the whole entire day. I was super uncomfortable. So what happens? People are talking to me. I miss conversations. Someone asks me to hand something in. I just can't work at my optimal level, up to my potential. So I may have a difficult day that day, and it was because of my pants, which sounds very silly, but something can really bother you to that extreme so that they have difficulty even following like everyday routines. You get dressed and brush your teeth the same way. Something happens in that morning where it creates you to have sensory dysregulation. You may not be able to follow through with your typical directions. Adults regulate in similar ways, but typically have found appropriate strategies such as exercising, listen to music, drinking from a straw, biting on the pen, biting their nails, weighted blankets, gum, flexible seating. They may want those stand desks, going up and down all day. Talking to friends. Some of us call our friends when we're having some dysregulation, and our friends help us. I think a lot of times kids start to regulate on us parents, which means when they're having a difficulty regulating, instead of kind of helping them through the regulation, we say, oh, come here, let me pick you up, which obviously we want to do sometimes. But what we really want to do is allow them to learn how to do it independently from us. Because when we hand them over to daycare, when we hand them over to school, they're on their own. So the fact is, you want to be comfortable in that you have taught them the strategies so they can be independent at school and in a good place. So what is sensory dysregulation? Okay, it can be so many things. Children regulate appropriately and inappropriately. Those inappropriate ones would be like biting, hitting, touching everything. Someone who has to run their hand down the hallway. Smelling items. Sometimes kids have to smell them before they eat. Sometimes they're smelling inedible objects. Licking items, tantrums, leaning on people or objects. You'll find that you start to notice your kid is always leaning on the table when he's trying to do something. They're leaning on you. This is a really funny one, but extra cuddling. Some people will come to me and say, oh, my child, they're just so cuddly. But really, they're actually getting sensory input from that cuddle. So they're just doing it more and more so that they don't have to figure out how to regulate on their own. They can just use you. We see a lot of kids jumping, climbing, picky eating, bumping, crashing, looking out of the corners of their eye, okay? When we talk about visual sighting, which is like looking out that corner of your eye, we also see kids laying on the floor, their arm is usually out, and they're rolling cars, and they're looking at them from the side of their eye. That's a sensory inappropriate regulation strategy, okay? We can see picky eating, lining up items, having difficulty sitting, biting their nails, having difficult time winding down for bedtime, hiding under things, refusal to do something, even if it's something very simple. So if you tell your child, just go put this toy over there, and you know they know how to do it. A lot of times when they're having a tantrum and refusing those things, it's because they're in a state of dysregulation. Now, with those oils that I gave you, and this is just a passive strategy, so I like to have passive strategies such as weighted blankets, the oil. So if you're utilizing a medical grade oil and your child's having a tantrum, you bring that oil over and you get it either on yourself close enough so they can smell it, put some on their clothes, or get some on their face. That way, the olfactory system takes in that input, and that immediately shifts the way the brain works. Like, that is the quickest way to get a child to shift. And it's really like a passive way, which means that we're not having to do a lot of work, which is kind of nice. Sensory dysfunction interferes with carrying out, like I said, a lot of those age-appropriate tasks we know they can do. Maybe your child goes to a new place and then they have to do something that they typically do, but they can't do it. Like, here, write your name on this. My child totally can write their name, but they can't do it that day. That means that they're having some dysregulation. Okay? We see it at doctor's offices, social events, making friends, maintaining friends. And really the important part of this is that sensory dysfunction does not mean you have autism. I think a lot of people hear the flapping or the rolling of the car or things like that, or the toe walking. Those are sensory responses to your environment. Those do not have anything to do with autism. A lot of children have those sensory responses that have autism, but they're not necessarily you have one, you have the other, okay? I think the most important thing that I would tell you about implementing these strategies is that you are consistency, carryover. You really want to try to get the whole family in on it, follow through. Now, if I give you 10 strategies today, you're like, oh my God, these are awesome. Like, let me try them all. But you really want to just choose one and make sure that it's in your consistent routine before you choose to do something else. That way, one, you can see if it works strategically, and two, that you know that you can follow through with one thing, even if it's just the passive type stuff, such as the oils, okay? You really need to be an advocate for your child with perseverance. And I say that because I have a child in these schools who has, similar to me, ADHD, sensory processing, makes it difficult for him in school to, complete all of his assignments. And I really have to, even though I'm an OT, even though I worked for that district, it doesn't matter. You just have to do what you got to do to get whatever your child needs. Don't worry about, anything, really. I mean, I would just do what you got to do to have your child get those services, or, what they need in school, if they need different seating. Early intervention, we want them to obviously have it at the home. You can also have OT, speech, all of those services at home and at the clinic, as well as school in the clinic as well. All right. What's our number one goal of self-regulation? Okay? We need to remain calm when we're having these moments with our children. It's not always easy, I understand that. Sometimes you actually need to separate yourself and go into the bathroom and shut the door for a minute so that you can calm yourself down. That way that you guys can help your child self-regulate. Okay? You really need to have your own self-care dialed in before you are able to do this. So I know my child has difficulties with transitions or change. I know that today I'm going to go to the store. Okay? What am I going to do before to get my nervous system to be calm so that when we go to the store, my energy is not affecting the child's energy? Because a lot of times our anxiety kind of trickles down to them. And I just would say, really get help for this, because it really can affect your whole family. Okay. So the senses that you guys probably know, sensory is sight, smell, taste, touch, hearing. Oh, here's our video.
Hi, everyone. This is Sarah, and I'm from the McNeill Children's Institute. I am here to just give you some tips about sensory processing. I have sensory processing disorder myself, as well as learning it for 24 years, being an occupational therapist. So, some of the things that help me understand um, the delay in speech and other things above sensory processing are because that the sensory processing is the beginning of the development of a person. We get sensory processing as a baby by rolling and sucking on bottles and pacifiers, and we get a lot more holding, carrying on the hip, things like that. And those things are all giving the child sensory input just by utilizing their environment. Some children with sensory processing from the start, there's no signs that they have this because they are getting that sensory input from their environment. But what they're doing is they're avoiding strength type activities. Okay. So they may not like tummy time. We're supposed to be doing tummy time 45 minutes, 1 to 2, 3 times a day to really build up the muscles in the back of the head, the back of the neck, and your back. Those muscles are really important for that posture and giving that proprioceptive input into the nervous system. The nervous system is run by muscle tone. Muscle tone is something that you were born with. It is the laxity or tightness of your muscles. I have very low muscle tone. I am very stretchy in a lot of ways. I also look, even if I work out all the time, I don't look as tight muscle wise as some other people. The high tone individuals look like they have a lot of defined muscle, even if they do not work out. So that's kind of how you can see if your child, see that flexibility or, see that tightness. If you can kind of see the difference between, that low muscle tone, that typical muscle tone, and that high muscle tone. High muscle tone is a lot more rare, and low muscle tone is very common among many people. What that means is the tone of the muscle is not giving the nervous system the input that it is looking for. So kids start to look outside themselves. They start running, climbing, jumping. You may think your child has strength when you're seeing them so hyperactive, always on the move. But the fact of the matter is, they are having that strength with momentum. Momentum creates them to have the appearance of having strength. But when you get them in isometric positions, which are positions with no momentum, so such as a plank position, laying on your stomach and doing the Superman position and being able to hold that position. Those are positions that are very important for our nervous system to be getting that input. Okay. So if we're not getting that input from our nervous system and from our muscle tone, we need to override that with strength. So we're talking about, 3-year-olds, we're doing sit-ups, we're doing bear walks, we're doing frog jumps, we're doing wheelbarrow walks, we're doing the egg hold, we're doing the Superman position, things that are isometric that will increase that core strength. And then eventually it will move out to that fine motor skill. Okay. So sensory seeking children should do these exercises maybe for 1 to 2 minutes, 3 to 5 times a day, keeping their nervous system in a good place. Okay. When those children are waking up in the morning, okay, you're supposed to wake up about 10 feet from the edge of the cliff. Okay, your nervous system, as you sleep, backs up your nervous system to be at a more calm level. Their nervous system has a difficult time doing that through sleep. So some days they wake up really hyper, And some days they had a good night's sleep and their nervous system did get back to that from that edge of the cliff. Typically, a neurotypical person would be about 10 feet from the edge of the cliff. Maybe someone spills coffee on you, you get cut off on the highway, but your nervous system continually backs that up. Okay. When you have a nervous system that doesn't have the strength to regulate it, okay, you're 2 feet from the edge of the cliff. So you don't have as much patience. You go to have a low frustration tolerance. You may go from 0 to 100 very quickly. You may have tantrums over very small things very quickly because you don't have a lot of room. You're already waking up in that yellow zone. We want to try to, as they wake up, to back that up by doing those strength type exercises so that when these little things happen, they may have small tantrums, but you know that you can back them up again with the exercises. Eventually, that muscle will take over and they will utilize that in their everyday play. So, that's something really helpful for parents and therapists that are seeing that sensory seeking behavior. Some things that you will see that they cannot do is hanging from the monkey bars for 5 to 10 seconds. You will see them not really wanting to climb on rock climbing walls or do anything that really requires that strength without momentum. So those are those sensory seeking kids. The sensory avoiding kids are kind of from the same reason. When you don't have that muscle tone, when you have that flexibility and you don't have the strength myelinating that nervous system, you just have the low muscle tone, then it's as if you're living on a busy street and the busy street brings all this road noise. And the road noise does not get absorbed by the muscle tone because it's low. The muscle tone needs something surrounding it so that it has a protective barrier. Okay, that protective barrier is muscle. So if you plant trees on your yard behind that busy road, it is a buffer for that noise. So the noise isn't directly going into your nervous system or into your house. Okay, so those people are sensory avoiders. They cannot handle the amount of sensory input coming in because they don't have anything to absorb it. Okay. We do the same protocol for them. We increase that strength by doing those isometric positions. So you can be a sensory avoider and seeker at the same time because again, you don't have that sensory myelation. They come from the same origin. What you're going to see when you create some self-regulation and that strength that they're supposed to be at for their age, you will start seeing an increase in speech and all of the other activities they're supposed to be doing above that first developmental level. This is just a start. I'm going to come back with some strategies and I hope you got a lot out of this. Thank you for joining us and we really appreciate you.
So that's one of my videos on my McNeill page. I try to do as much training as possible. So when we talk about this, I'm going to give you one example. So we have standardized scores. So basically from birth up, we have information that's been given to us as OTs, and we know how much a child of 3 is supposed to do, 5, 8. It doesn't, as long as they're that age, it is supposed to be the exact amount of strength. So for instance, okay, I'm actually getting on the floor here. So this is called egg position, okay? This is called supine flexion. Now, you don't want to be like this because a lot of kids do that. So basically, you are measuring the strength of the neck and the core, okay? So children who are very active and their parents say, they are so strong. I say, well, let's get them into an isometric position where they can't move. So kids who are, 3 years old should be able to hold that position with their neck and their core for 5 seconds. When you get up to 8, it jumps all the way up to 20 seconds. And then at 10, it starts 30 seconds and above, okay? Now, what is that telling me? I will tell you that a lot of kids cannot lift their head off the floor. It's very interesting. So on that sensory spectrum, okay, the overstimulated is just too much information. The understimulated is too little information, but as I said on the video, they are treated the same way because what they're missing is the strength, because the muscle tone is it's very low, you know. So like if you look at me, you know, I'm very squishy when it comes to like touching my you know, my actual muscles. Those are the things that indicate to me that my child has difficulty regulating. The sensory regulation is different from like autism, ADHD, those things, because it ebbs and flows. Your kid wakes up one day, he's totally fine. The next day, it's like a disaster. The whole day just starts off wrong. The nervous system has to get to a certain point before they go to bed during the sleep so that they wake up 10 feet behind that edge of that cliff, okay? So throughout the day, we'll just be seeing behaviors. Okay, it's one of those days, you know. So the examples that you'll see of the sensory dysregulation: difficulty sleeping, picky eaters, covering the ears with loud noise, can't stand still or focus, easily distracted. How many people do you see, like the kid goes from 0 to 100 in 2 seconds flat? You almost can't figure out what happened. You know, unable to complete everyday regular tasks on some days. That means that you're having a dysregulated day, okay? Difficulty with change, transitions, large places. I remember when my son was up to the age of, I want to say 11, and he had, every time we went to my parents' house with all the family members, he would fall asleep every single time. I'm like, what is going on here? So I just, you know, as an OT, obviously I thought about it for a while, and I'm realizing, okay, he's shutting down because it's too much for him. He just didn't have that capability. As he went through OT and as he matured, now he can be at the family, and the family says, wow, he's just like a completely different person. So it's pretty amazing what giving them the right input can do. You may see a lot of kids spinning, running, jumping, pacing, a lot of pacing back and forth, the kicking, the yelling. Just depends on the environment. Sometimes, you know, your teacher says, oh, they're so perfect in school. You're like, great, because they're really not at home, you know, they're just terrible. But it's that structure, so you can see the difference in those two environments, and you say, okay, what is the difference? Maybe school is what they need because they need a lot of stimulation to do well. Maybe school is good because it has that structure. Then there's the opposite. Kids are like terrible at school, and the parents are like, they're so totally fine at home. But at home, you're not asking to do non-preferred activities all day. So if they don't want to cut, you're like, okay, we'll move on to another activity. But in school, they have to do non-preferred activities, which it's why they're okay at home and they have a more difficult time at school. You know, that's why you wake up one day, they're fine, and then the next day they're, you know, wake up a little more crazy. The next one, there's hidden senses, which of course we need to throw that in there. There's really not a lot of visual signs of the two hidden senses. The vestibular system is what helps us understand where we are in space, especially in large places like this. So it gives you an idea of like you versus the environment, okay? That's the vestibular system. It tells you where you are, where you need to go. Do I need to go around things? The proprioceptive system is input to the joints. So just as this quick example, if you have a bad day and you go get a massage, you're getting input into those joints and you feel better. Because when you give input into those joints, you are hitting on dopamine in the brain, which tells serotonin it's time to release, and it comes down. So some of you have come to the clinic and you may get the Wilbarger protocol, which is basically a brushing program with joint compression. We're giving that input to the child before we know that something's coming up, whether it's a change or a transition or a non-preferred activity. But these two are very important for the kids' learning. Vestibular, like I said, it just is all about movement, okay? We see kids, you know, shaking their head sometimes, called head wagging. They like to be upside down a lot, like to be jumping a lot. Rocking, maybe they like, you know, just like to do the rocking or pacing, you know, around the house. A few ways to gain that vestibular input: bear walks, crab walks, wheelbarrow walks, swings, trampoline. Now, when you're looking at your child, if they are someone who's doing that, seeking that vestibular input, you want to make sure of one thing. When you spin around, your eyes, after you spin, go back and forth. That's called positive nystagmus. Now, that is the right thing to be doing. So if your child's one of those ones you're like, they never get dizzy, they just keep spinning around and around, you're like, I don't know how they're doing it. But then when you look at their eyes after, their eyes are not going back and forth. That means that the vestibular input from the environment is not entering into their vestibular system. And when I say vestibular system, or I say central nervous system, it is your head, neck, spine is your central nervous system. Your parasympathetic nervous system is all the nerves going through your entire body, okay? So those two areas are detecting these things. So if they're not detecting and integrating the vestibular into their system, they're going to continue to try to do those activities, okay? Proprioception. It basically lets you know where you are in space. I'm safe on this stage. You know, I'm not going anywhere. I know I'm going to be okay. It helps organize your brain, know when to move, know how to move. When you know your child needs proprioceptive input, they're leaning on people, they're over cuddly, rough play with toys, rough play with the animal. You know, they really are looking for this crashing and like rolling around with the dog. Sometimes kids are a little bit too rough with pets, and it's not that they're trying to harm them, they just don't know their own body versus their strength or how much to touch. You can see like some kids like push really hard on the pencil, they're trying to get input. Chewing on items, a lot of kids chewing on their clothes, purposely crashing into people, no personal space. So really getting inside someone else's bubble, personal space. And a lot of these things really do affect those childhood friendships. You know, if someone's in your face all the time, it's not like you really want to seek them out as a friend. If your child is in that overstimulated place, okay, you want to avoid sensory experiences or that input if you can. If you can't, you want to give them a calming experience and try to bring down their nervous system with something like giving that proprioceptive input before you go in the grocery store. So if your child is in the car seat, it's a great time to give them the massage, give them some joint compressions, tell them what you're about to do. We're going to go in the grocery store. These are our three things that we have to focus on. You know, keeping our hands to ourselves, asking before touching, and helping mom. You know, so we giving them a little bit of information, which helps them to organize their brain so that when they're going into a store, they can do what you're asking them to do. They may shut down, appear non-compliant, inattentive, spacey. There's been times that I was overstimulated. Maybe I had too much going on at work, and I just fall asleep. If you can believe it, really. They might act out as a way of escaping, you know, trying to get out of the situation. They get into that fight or flight place, and basically they just exhibit a lot of physical behaviors like get away from me, just that, you know, hitting, kicking. They're unable to learn, socialize, and complete activities. Can you imagine going to a party, your parents bring you to a party, you don't really know what's going on, Your parents don't tell you like the start time, the end time. You're just brought to this party. You don't know anyone. You're maybe 3, 4, 5. You get there and you're like, you don't know what to do. There's other kids there, but they're playing, but you can't get from A to B. It's like your executive functioning, the function that says, okay, how do I do this? Your brain tells you, okay, go over to the kids and pick up something that you want to play with. That stuff shuts down. So you may have to physically help them at that point. Overstimulation in school. Bothered by the lights. The fluorescent lights are tough. Sounds, smells, large unstructured activities. I remember when my son was first having his diagnosis and, having a real difficulty. It was great in every class, but when it came to PE or a recess, he would attack people. He just didn't know what to do with himself in that large of a scale area. There wasn't rules, that black and white. A lot of times they're black and white, so they don't see the signs of those gray areas. Were like, okay, I should go over there, play with that group of friends. It's just too much. Prefer to stay on the ground at recess, doesn't like to go up on the equipment. Clumsy, bumps into things, can only respond to one thing at a time, has difficulty, like I said, with those routine tasks, and unable to follow classroom routines. So they're basically getting in trouble for being overwhelmed, but the teacher doesn't necessarily understand that. When we do occupational therapy with families, we like to have that discussion with the classroom and say, okay, these are the things that are inhibiting them from learning, from completing those activities. They're not trying to be, against what you want them to do. They're just having a difficult time getting there. If your child is understimulated, they may start jumping up, trying to wake themselves up. They may shut down and appear non-compliant. An act out for attention and stimulation usually, or needs assistance to complete something that they regularly do. Understimulation at school happens a lot, especially when they're tired. We call it the blue zone. May miss directions, not complete assignments, appear tired, difficulty focusing eyes, hearing like little sounds that they're focusing on, maybe a beeping in the back, bump into people or objects, not realize like they're touching someone or in their personal space. Children also might be able to be more touchy, smell items, chew on their hair, chew on their clothes. A lot of kids actually fall out of their chair because their nervous system isn't awake. Okay, we're gonna start to kind of give you guys some strategies because that's really what it's all about, Obviously, we want you to talk to your pediatrician if you have something. You can talk to the child's teacher, consult with an OT. We're going to go into much more detail about schools on the third presentation on how to get the 504. What does the 504 mean? How do you get extra assistance for your child in class? Okay. We're going to talk about some stuff that's in your packet. Okay. So if you can open up your packet and pull out there's like a white piece of paper with little squares all over it. Okay, so if you pull out that piece of paper, it's a big white piece of paper, and there's a strip on the top, and there's lots of little squares, and then there's a strip on the bottom, okay? This is what is a behavior chart, okay? It's a very simple thing. I did it for you this way so that you could constantly change the behavior. So this is the one I'm talking about, okay? So pull that out. This is like your best friend. You can bring this with you everywhere you go, which when I had young children, I literally had a bag of rocks, and each child had an empty bag. And when they were making a good choice, they took a rock and they put it in their bag. That way I was able to continue that positive reinforcement when we were out and about. So I made you this. Say your child needs to keep their hands to themselves. They like to grab people, hit, whatever it is. You're going to put hands to self on the top. Use your, dry erase. Every time they make a good choice and they keep their hands to themselves, even if it's just for a second. So if you have a child who's pretty typically hitting regularly, and you say, oh my gosh, you have nice hands just for that 1 minute, you have to catch them being good. You want to give them the attention for positive things. So if they hit 1 second after you just told them, you ignore that, okay? But when we're on our visual chart, we bring a dry erase marker with us. We have what we're working on here. We have what the reward is, okay? Maybe your child likes ice cream, okay? We're going to go get ice cream if you can get through your chart. Maybe it's just, hey, like lay in bed with mom kind of thing. Anything that you want to do, you put down here. So every time they make a good choice, they keep their hands to themselves, they say yes, please, thank you, whatever the behavior is. Every time you either can put stickers here, you can use the dry erase and they can put a check, they can put a dot. When they're making a good choice, they get one. When they're making an inappropriate or bad choice, they have to wipe it off or take the sticker off. That way they start to understand black and white. Make a good choice, you get something. Make a bad choice, something is taken away, okay? This is a very simple idea, but can be used for pretty much anything, okay? So when I would suggest just picking one thing at home, and you're not going to say not hitting. You're going to say keeping my hands to myself. And then you're going to put whatever reward on the bottom, and you can utilize it in the house, bring it with you on vacation, wherever you do. You're going to notice that when you don't have this visual, you forget to give the positive praise, you forget to ignore, and your child has a lot more behaviors because both of you do not have that visual to focus on. Okay? The next thing that's in your, pull out there's a thing called the alert card, okay? And we're going to go over this in a small way today. The next session will be more in depth on this, okay? This is just so you have something to go home with, okay? So you're going to take out your pipe cleaner with the bead on it. Okay, so the alert card has 3 things on it. Red is like, I'm really angry, I fell off the end, I really need help right now. The yellow is like, you notice your kid is starting to do something that preemptively causes them to get in the red. So maybe you see them pacing. Maybe you hear that whining noise, okay? So green is like, I'm good to go, I'm ready to work, I'm able to follow directions. Here's a piece of trash, go put it in the trash can. That's following a direction, okay? So you know they're in that green spot. The yellow is when they start to fall off that wagon, okay? You just know those sounds. You got a couple, you got a crying going on, or you hear something getting hit, just the little stuff that comes up. So what you're going to do is you're going to do what Chris is doing, just put the pipe cleaner through the top and through the bottom, okay? That way the bead can kind of go up and down in the front. And what you do is you say, oh, I feel so good right now. I am in the green zone. What does the green zone mean? I feel calm. I feel relaxed. I feel like I can follow directions. Okay, let me test out if you're in the green zone. Here's a piece of trash. Can you go put this piece of trash in the trash can? They do it, okay? The yellow zone. Okay, what can you tell me about when you start to get upset? What do? I feel frustrated. I start rolling around, ignoring what you're saying. You see those things that start. That's where you want to intervene, this yellow zone. You literally never want to get to the red if possible, okay? So in the yellow zone is when you do the bear walks and the sit-ups and all of those strategies, the massage, the oils. You want to try to keep them in this green zone. So if it was me and I had a child who may had sensory issues, when they woke up, the first thing I would do is our 1-minute routine of bear walks, and then our crab walks, and then our frog jumps, okay? So that even if you woke up a little bit off, you were able to recover by doing those activities, okay? So, the red zone. Unfortunately, we all get to the red zone, you know, it's like the tantrum. It's shut down. It's like you're doing your homework with your child and they absolutely will not continue. You know, that's when you're in that red zone. There's not a lot you can do. You need to be patient, you need to wait, and you need to wait them out until they kind of go through the cycle. So your nervous system is based on what's happening in your environment, right? So a child crying, it goes like this. Okay, so the child cries, they get really upset, and then eventually they calm down. Now, you know when your baby's crying and you're like, oh, I just want it to stop. So you go in and you help them, okay? You're literally telling the nervous system, oh no, I got it. They can self-regulate off me. So what you want to think about when your child is crying, tantruming, all of that, is that when you go through the cycle and you get to the end, the nervous system has been alerted by the crying. It reverberates off the nervous system and it says, it's time for you to click in. It's time for your nervous system to help your body take it down. So don't try to interrupt that crying at the peak because you want them to learn how to come down, okay? No child, one thing someone said to me, no child died from crying, okay? So if you're having a difficult time with your child, you need a minute to yourself. Take the minute to yourself. Allow them to get through it. I know it's stressful. I know it's difficult. But you will see that the nervous system will start to learn how to heal itself by going through the whole cycle, okay? So this is just something for you guys to practice. It's more of like a game. You know, at this point, for this week until next Monday, you're utilizing this as just, oh, I feel so good right now. I'm in the green zone. Let me cook you some breakfast. I am able to do that. Or if your child comes up to you and says, can you cook me some breakfast? And you say, you know what? Give me 15 minutes. I feel like I'm in the yellow zone. I need to calm myself down before I can do another task. It's okay to have them wait. Okay? Red zone, I'd say lock yourself in the bathroom for about 15, 20 minutes and hope for the best. So in there's a lot of information on that alert card, so you can read this. Just do some practice over the next week. That way you can have some more questions, you know, when you come for next week, okay? So this brings us to the end of this first conversation about the nervous system. You know, I hope you leave here just with something, anything that could help you or your child or your family be more cohesive and just kind of have a better life. You know, I think that it's really difficult to have children, especially with what all of us families have been going through COVID. And I think it's really important to understand that this is normal. This is the new normal. And it's okay to have a difficulty and it's okay to learn how to get through it. So I just want to say thank you. I'm super grateful for you guys coming out today and for Rhode Island Prevention Coalition for putting this on. They're super supportive and we're just all here to help all of the families in Rhode Island. So thank you guys.